Good Monday morning, everybody. This is Quinn Baum with Names and Numbers, and today I want to talk about an awesome study and a story that comes from a book that I really love. It's called Top Dog, The Science of Winning and Losing by Ashley Merriman and Poe Bronson. Let's jump right into it. So about 10 years ago, the Air Force Academy was looking into how it could reduce the number of cadets that dropped out of their first year. So the Air Force Academy is a great university, and the cadets that go in have high scores on the ACT and SAT, really good GPAs. And the university was looking into ways that it could reduce the number of cadets that dropped out in their first year. There's a lot of energy and effort and money that goes into each cadet, so they were trying to figure out a way that they could improve, reduce the dropout rate that they had for these freshmen. Well, as freshman cadets come in, they're assigned to a squadron. And these squadrons eat together, they sleep together, they do everything together. And they figured, well, maybe what we could do is we could put all of the 4.0 students with the high-risk 2.0s, those that are most likely to drop out, usually had lower GPAs. So maybe we could put the high 4.0s and the 2.0s together, and the 4.0s will help bring up those 2.0s, and we'll have a lower dropout rate. So sure enough, they created all these squadrons, and these cadets would go in, and there were 4.0s and 2.0s. And after the first semester, they looked at the data, and lo and behold, they had actually increased the dropout rate. They had made it worse. And they looked into it and found that actually it was really demoralizing for the 2.0ers to have these 4.0ers who were always doing awesome, and it actually created more stress in their lives and increased that dropout rate. So that was lesson number one. But there was another really interesting unintended consequence of putting those 4.0s and those 2.0s together, and that is they created a bunch of squadrons where all the cadets going into those squadrons all had pretty much the same GPA, right in that 3-point range. And what had happened is those GPAs of those cadets in those 3.0 squadrons had actually improved really significantly. So they looked into that as well, and they found that what had happened is this squadron would get together, the cadets would look around and instinctively look for the smartest cadet in the group. They would look for that 4.0er, the one who had done really well on the SAT. And as they looked around, they didn't find the natural smartest cadet in the room. They started to think, well, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the smartest one in this group. And as a result, they started working really hard to emulate that 4.0 student. And so those 3.0ers looked around, there was a little bit of competition there, but their grades started to get better and better. I absolutely love the unintended consequence of this study, and I think it applies in the real world in a lot of different ways. So let's talk about it a little bit. To me, what this means is that you need to be really particular about who you compare yourself to. Picking an unrealistic model, one that's too far out of reach, is only demoralizing. And I'll give you a great example from my own life. Back in my 20s, I was a runner, and I ran 3 years in a row a half marathon called Robie Creek. And Robie Creek is called the toughest half. It's 8 miles running uphill, followed by 5 miles running downhill. And my goal every year was to run it in less than 2 hours. Now, I had used that 2-hour mark because I was working at a company the first year with a bunch of guys who had all run cross country in high school. They had different builds than I did. They had different social lives, and some of them were single. They had more training time, and they were all running Robie Creek in less than 2 hours. But for me, that was unrealistic. It was unrealistic for me, a father with 3 kids at home, a wife who loved him and wanted to spend time with him, and having not started running until my early 20s, I didn't have that practice back in my teenage years. Running Roby under 2 hours was probably unrealistic. The closest I ever got was 2 hours and 10 minutes. And despite the fact that I finished this amazing task of running this horrible half marathon, after the third year, I decided that I wasn't going to run anymore. And for years, I didn't. Now, I'm back to running now, but I much prefer my bicycle. So again, I had picked the wrong model. I had picked the wrong person to compare myself to. And in the long run, despite the fact that I accomplished something amazing, I had demoralized myself and decided that I wasn't a runner. So again, be really particular about who you compare yourself to. If you're in a sales organization and you don't have any control over the sales reports, pull together a group of 3 or 4 people who you all kind of sell about the same in a given pay period or in a given month or in a given year, and use that as your competition machine. Use that as a group of people that you're going to compare yourself to, that you're going to use as motivation to do better. Don't compare yourself to the guy who does twice as much as you do on an annual basis. That's just demoralizing. Thanks for joining me today. As always, I'm Quinn Baum with Names and Numbers. If you haven't already, please click the subscribe button below and give us a little thumbs up because it helps us track our growth. Thanks for joining me. Go out and make a great week.